cool, but I was talking about like actual, supernatural things. And Jesus Christ did do supernatural things. I'm not taking away from that at all. But then a couple of them said, well, David and Moses. Well, and see, I'm kind of getting there, but David and Moses they were superheroes in the sense that they did some great things. But I'm thinking like supernatural, right? Because when you think of superheroes, you don't think of like a war hero necessarily, do you? Although they are heroes. That's what David was. We think of an actual superhuman person, a superhero. Yeah, he did. He was a part of some miracles, right? But I thought David was kind of a cop-out in a way a little bit. And Moses to a certain extent. I was thinking Elijah and Elisha. He was kind of as much of a superhero as you could get. Outside of Jesus Christ, we're putting him in a different category, right? Like he's in another category. Superhero. Like a real superhero. But Elijah and Elisha, they did things in the Old Testament that if you saw them do it today, you would think they're superhuman. You know? Just some crazy stuff. And one of my favorite passages, I don't know about you guys, but 1 Kings chapter 18. Make your way over there. Let me get situated with my notes. Make sure I got this right. Okay. And I don't know, do we have the slides going yet, Brother Kyler? Appreciate that. Well, there's not really a lot with the slides. We're kind of just going to look at this passage in 1 Kings 18. And we're going to read a good portion of this morning that we may not even get out of chapter 18. But here's Elijah, and like we talked about last week, he's dealing with Ahab, right? And we understand who Ahab is. He was a man identified as a king who did more wickedly than anyone that was before him. Remember that? Now, I don't know about you guys, but I don't want that to be my testimony. Literally, that's what the man is known for, is not only himself, but also dragging other people along into more and more wickedness. And that's anything but a compliment, right? Unless you're going for that sort of thing, which I can't imagine, and you never know. People kind of go for all kinds of crazy things nowadays. But Ahab, for whatever reason, the Lord decided to allow Elijah to deal with him. And some of the banter between the two of them and some of the things that happen with Ahab and Elijah kind of creates some great storylines in the Bible. So maybe it was partially Ahab's personality. And Ahab wasn't all bad. We'll talk about him maybe next week. We'll talk about him a little more. He had some good times, some somewhat good spots in his reign, but most of it was bad, right? So Ahab, we learned last week that if it wasn't enough that he got into the sins of Jeroboam, he also took a wife of, I can't remember the king's name, but up there in Sidon, his wife's name was who? Ahab's wife? Very good. Jezebel, and she caused Israel to sin even more. So we'll begin in verse 1. It says, it came to pass, this is 1 Kings 18:1, after many days that the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the 3rd year, saying, go, and that 3rd year is a reference to when he pronounced the drought, okay? We're getting a little bit of the context here. So he said there's not going to be rain for many days. So in the 3rd year, we're just going to safely assume, because of James chapter 5, it's the 3rd year around the 6th month. Do you guys agree with that? Okay. So his 3rd year saying, go show thyself unto Ahab, and I will send rain upon the earth. And Ahab went to show himself unto Elijah went to show himself unto Ahab, and there was a sore famine in Samaria. And Ahab called Obadiah, which was governor of his house. Now Obadiah feared the Lord greatly, for it was so when Jezebel cut off the prophets of the Lord, that Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them by 50 in a cave, and fed them with bread and water. And Ahab said unto Obadiah, Go into land, unto all the fountains of the water, and all the brooks, peradventure we may find grass to save the horses and mules alive. They would lose not all the beasts. So they divided the land between them to pass throughout it. Ahab went one way by himself, and Obadiah went another way by himself. And as Obadiah was in the way, behold, Elijah met him. And he knew him, and he fell on his face and said, Art thou that my Lord Elijah? And he answered him, I am. Go tell my Lord, behold, Elijah is here. And he said, What have I sinned, that thou wouldest deliver thy servant into the hand of Ahab to slay me? As the Lord thy God liveth, there is no nation or kingdom whither my Lord hath not sent to seek thee. And when they said, He is not there, he took an oath of the kingdom, nation, that they found thee not. And now thou sayest, Go tell thy Lord, behold, Elijah is here. It shall come to pass, as soon as I am gone from thee, that the Spirit of the Lord shall carry thee whither I knew not, or know not. And when I come to tell Ahab, and he cannot find thee, he shall slay me, but I, thy servant, fear the Lord from thy youth. So, and he repeats the story of what is said earlier. So here's what happens, this conversation between Elijah and Obadiah. Obadiah sees Elijah, and Obadiah falls on his face, and he says, Is it really you, Elijah? So Elijah had disappeared for 3 years, right? You guys remember that? So he went off, and then the barrel of meal and all that, and he was sustained. At first, it was by the brook Cherith, just kind of all of the kingdoms around, and he's even made these other kingdoms swear that they did not know where you were. Because if they knew where you were and they wouldn't deliver you to them, then he was going to kill them. And for sure, if I go and say, Elijah is here, you know what you're going to do? The Spirit of the Lord is going to take you somewhere else where Ahab can't kill you, and then he's going to kill me. Did you guys catch that? So interesting there, we'll kind of start there in verse 12 where it says the Spirit of the Lord is going to carry him. Look over, we're going to just hit a couple of these passages, and I want to show you something that's really interesting here in the Bible, Ezekiel chapter 3. So first of all, the first thing I want to say is this is something that happens several times in the Bible where a person is literally teleported by the Spirit of the Lord. Raise your hand if you knew that that happened in the Bible. Okay, so the Bible actually ends up being a pretty crazy book. All right? It's not you're here and then all of a sudden you're on the other side of Portland. Literally, just like that. Okay? This kind of stuff goes down in the Bible. This is the way the Lord is. He's incredible. Amen? Ezekiel chapter 3, verse 12. Then the Spirit of the Lord took me up, and I heard behind me a voice of great rushing, saying, Blessed be the glory of the Lord from his place. I heard also the noise of the wings of living creatures that touched one another, and the noise of the wheels over against them, and a noise of a great rushing. So the Spirit lifted me up and took me away, and I went in bitterness in the heat of my spirit, but the hand of the Lord was strong upon me. So you could follow this story a little closer if you wanted to. You could read it when you get home. But Ezekiel is literally being taken over in like Tel Aviv and then over to Jerusalem and these different places just all of a sudden. Literally just zap. You know, faster than Superman. You know? Superman ain't got nothing on that. Go to Acts chapter 8. How many of y'all know the story where Philip goes down and he witnesses to the Ethiopian eunuch and he gets saved? Okay, so that's what just happened. And then look at verse 39. And we know that the Ethiopian eunuch gets baptized. So it says, when they were come up out of the water, the Spirit of the Lord caught away Philip, and the eunuch saw him no more, and he went on his way rejoicing. But Philip was found at Azotus, and passing through, he preached in all the cities till he came to Caesarea. So he's down there in Ethiopia. If you know anything about the geography of Israel, Ethiopia is in the northern part of Africa, correct? And he's down there, and he gets taken out, And then all of a sudden, he's back up there in Israel. And what's cool about Philip, and this kind of shows his character, look what it says. He's found, and he's just all of a sudden in this city, and he's like, oh, I guess I might as well preach here. Like, I'm a pastor, and that would not be my first thought at all. Preaching would be the last thing on my mind. Like, what just happened? You know? It's like, oh, big deal. I guess I'll just go ahead and preach the gospel while I'm here, you know? So, good on him. And then look at John chapter 6, and it just teleported right over there. That's what happened. So, I'll say two things about that. One, it's interesting that Obadiah understands that this is something that takes place. So think about 1 Kings, right? Here we have Obadiah and Elijah, and he's like, I know how you prophets are. God just zips you around from one place to the other. So either that was just a rumor that was false at the time and he just made it up, or somebody else made it up, or that had happened. Or it was happening. Like literally it happened a bunch of times, or it was commonplace and you just don't read about it. So what is also interesting is we talked about this several weeks ago when it comes to the rapture. Remember the windows in heaven and all those types of things being taken up into a cloud? It's possible that the Lord, literally, either you get teleported up into the cloud, or you go straight up into the cloud at the rapture. Like you can experience the whole thing like a jet, right? Take off, or more like a rocket. Take off like a rocket up to the cloud, or maybe once you hit the cloud, you teleport all the way to the third heaven. Now I know that that's conjecture.